what I want to do is I want to read out.
Do it. I like these.
What the APA. So this is one of the things that got me thinking about this. The American Psychological Association came out with new guidelines about how to do therapy for boys and men, and they've had it for women and girls for 40 years, and they finally came out with this one for men. And one of the problems is it's so progressive in its language right at the beginning that you know where this is going. And one of the biggest problems is now that the guidelines have been set, the next step will be force. If you're not giving therapy this way, you are not in line with the APA. You're not doing it correctly.
Which, who gave them authority? Who gave them power?
They're a private organization. They're a private organization. And we just didn't accept that these private organizations are the end-all be-all.
Dude.
When they're just a private organization that's handing out licenses.
And how many of these guys, let's be honest here, have kids? And let's see their record in lives first. You're making guidelines on how to raise a man, but how'd your kids turn out? Do you have kids?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm serious. You know how many, like, these the social workers and things like that trying to help kids? Some of them don't even have kids. So you're going to tell a parent... Right? You're going to tell a parent how to raise a kid when, dude, she's trying to keep her own head on. He's trying to figure it out. Like, there's no book on how to raise your kids except love them. Yeah. Right? And make sure you're doing the best for them. And some of us have different views on how to raise kids. I'm totally for my kids scrapping it out in the backyard, man, and getting bloody. Hey, you know what I mean? And there's certain parents that are like, no, they need a timeout. Fine, man. Get your kids on a timeout. Totally cool. I ain't judging. Right? But I'm just saying, like, we all have different ways to raise our kids. But who gave you the authority to tell me how to raise my kids?
And that's where it's headed. So the guidelines, they define traditional masculine ideology. Notice the word ideology. So it's not even, they've completely separated biological. And I'll get into that in a second. But they've separated biological. This is all social. This is ideology that's been inputted into men. Therefore, we need to remove it. Right. Now, different people from the APA try to kind of cover their tracks. Well, that's not exactly what we just meant. The extremes of this, blah, blah, blah. That's not really what you said in the intro.
The average person will read that and go...
Exactly. And the ideology, traditional masculine ideology, as a particular constellation of standards that have held sway over large segments of the population. Once again, it's socialization, not biology. Including anti-femininity, so the getting away from femininity, achievement, eschewal of the appearance of weakness, and adventure, risk, and violence. So already the traditional masculine ideology is all these things that have been worded to be bad, right?
Yeah, so basically everything I just said is bad.
You're bad.
I'm a bad dad. Jeez.
It says that in the aggregate, males experience a greater degree of social and economic power than girls and women in a patriarchal society.
That's the word.
Men benefit from their social power, are also confined by system-level policies. Okay, the patriarchy is confining them, and practices as well as individual-level psychological resources necessary to maintain male privilege. So what are you doing in your mind to keep this male privilege? Thus, male privilege often comes with a cost in the form of adherence to sexist ideologies. Okay, so you're suffering because you're trying to adhere to these ideologies designed to maintain male power. You're trying to uphold the patriarchy, basically, that also restrict men's ability to function adaptively. So basically, you're suffering because you're trying to uphold the patriarchy, which is forcing you to uphold the patriarchy. You're caught in a cycle or a system.
You hearing this mess? You hearing this? I ain't suffering. You can have your opinion. You know what I mean? It's like they're basically saying men are suffering because we're trying to be men.
Yeah, that's pretty much
when
what
we're
it's
not
saying.
Complaining about being men.
No,
the women are complaining about us being men.
We need to be men.
Yeah.
Think about it. Think about it. Like
what?
How many men are really raised by men in today's culture?
Boom.
So let's even go beyond the father figure in the home. Okay, so let's say the father.
That's good.
You know,
wow. Yeah.
So let's say you don't have a father in your house. Well, you're already behind in terms of the masculine train. So you have a woman raising you at home. You go to your school. How many teachers are women? Vast majority. Even when you go to college, you still have a large number of women, right? So
enrollees, right, are majority women too.
In universities now it's majority women. And when you're forming, the vast majority of people who are guiding you and raising you up are women. I'm sorry, but a woman doesn't know how to be a man in the way that a man does. And when I look at my son, I see my own traits. I also see what he's going to run into in a very personal way. And it's like, okay, I know how to guide him to be a man because I grew up. I know I see certain things he does, and I'm like, I remember doing that when I was really little. And my wife doesn't see it. I never noticed that, but it's because, and it goes further.
But the devil's advocate would say, are you going to read that?
No, keep going because I want to find something that somebody said.
Because the devil's advocate would say to you then, well, that's not really because you know how to be a man. It's just because you're trying to redeem him from your faults.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, how would you ask that? How would you answer that? You're not really saying because you just said, what you basically said was, I know how to be a man. My wife doesn't know how to be a man, so I see things in my kid that he's going to need to learn, right? But the devil's advocate would say, that's not manhood. That's just you're trying to prevent him from doing wrong.
No, I wouldn't say that because here's how we see it. You have to remember there's biology involved. You're not just socialization.
His son's a son, by the way.
Yes, he is a son. He is a boy.
I'm not mocking. It's just the truth.
If there's biological involved, there's a natural thing that happens of testosterone. No matter what, we can tell the effects that testosterone has. We can tell what's going to happen with the brain. And this actually leads into this perfectly.
Cool.
So there was a guy a professor of psychology at the University of Wisconsin, La Crosse, and he says there's no intent to reject biological determinants. Instead, it just goes beyond the scope of these particular guidelines. Here's my problem with that. So he said, if I treated somebody for major depressive disorder, it doesn't matter to me as a clinician what percentage of their depression might have genetic determinants. I can't change their genes. The problem is you've completely forgotten hormones. So any other person that's in the medical field looks at the actual levels in the body. If you're lethargic and you're let's say you're nauseous, they're probably going to test you for sickness. They may test you for strep, they may test you for mono, whatever. They're going to test your body's levels in different areas to see, okay, what's causing this? What's going on? Psychology is the only field that doesn't look at the thing they're studying. So instead of him going, testosterone does have an effect on how a man will be a man, and going, let's study the levels of the testosterone and the estrogen and see, is there a correlation here? He's going, well, I'm not going to worry about that.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest problems is you've completely forgotten the hormonal effects, which goes back to biology. And this is what pisses me off about this whole thing is you're blaming testosterone for being over competitive and for being aggressive and for all of this. Yet then when we talk about it, you go, well, that doesn't matter. Testosterone doesn't matter. Well, you love to blame it.
That's right.
Shouldn't you use it as a source of like, okay, how is it right? So getting back to your question, I know what testosterone does in me. I can feel it if I've got elevated testosterone or lowered testosterone. I know over a course of weeks and months, I'm pretty in tune with like, okay, where are my levels at, right? I can see it in my son of like, let's get real here. If you've got heightened testosterone, you tend to have bigger sex drive. That's what all the commercials are talking about, right? These days, like if you're not having sex drive, if you're having problems in the bedroom, hey, it might be low testosterone. There's truth to that. So when I look at my boy, I know if he's got elevated testosterone levels, I know probably what's going through his mind. It's like, okay, son, here's where we get into self-control, discipline, all of that. If I'm not allowed to understand him that way, I'm in trouble. He's in trouble. Because then we have people telling him, well, you need to just suppress that. That's bad and evil. You need to be more caring, nurturing,
But here's what's
nourishing.
stupid, dude.